The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, Week 9 DraftKings ownership, projections, GPP pivot plays, and maybe some spread looks towards the end of the show to see what's moved from earlier in the week and see if there's any bets that I like, but probably someone you should listen to a bit more than me is Geoff Ulrich from DK Live. Have you looked at the betting board much here?
Yeah, a few games. I mean,
we'll save it. It'll be a
we'll save it for the end. That's a good idea. Yeah,
it'll be a tease for later on in the show. What I need all of you to do right now is smash the like button. That's step one. Step two is leave your DK handle in the comment section and tell me what you think Courtland Sutton's ownership is going to be in the Week 9 DraftKings Millionaire Maker. You do those three things, you're in a draw for $20 DK, which I will be giving out live on Monday's show, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the DraftKings YouTube channel. I am also live 10 a.m. Sunday morning on the DraftKings YouTube channel myself, Gary and Thorne, and Tim Undercust. We'll be taking your questions, reviewing all the injuries. There's a lot of injuries to go over, and some of these are going to be game time decisions. Plus, we'll go game by game, telling you all the injuries, the rankings, and updating you while taking your questions all at the same time. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please go subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. The race for 10 million downloads and listens for 2018 is on, and I need your help. So even if you only watch the video version, go subscribe to the audio version, whether you're iTunes, Apple, Android. You can do that on like Stitcher or Podbean or wherever. Paul, what's the one that you like?
Podcast Republic.
Podcast Republic. Download it on there. You don't even need to listen to it. Just download it because it'll help me get close to that $10 million number. Jeff, can you do that for me?
I'm going to download it like 5 times right after we're done, Pat.
Well, I'll say someone I was on with Mans earlier. I'm getting myself a Mans coin, which is just fantastic. But he had the great idea, just like, hey, even if you've like listened to them and deleted them, just go through and just download them all once you're on Wi-Fi, and then just delete them all right after. Boom! I can get a whole bunch of downloads that way. Gotta game the system a little bit, I think.
Hey, you put out the best fantasy content, Pat. We got to get you to 10 million. There's no question. I'm on board.
I see you say that, but I know that's disingenuous. Where can people
True.
subscribe?
It's the truth.
I mean, the Inward 9, you can go download that, right?
You can, but we're kind of on hiatus, so probably wait till January.
January for golf. All right, let's talk football then. Week 9 ownership. Let's start at running back. And if we go to the top of the fansharesports.com tagging system, big surprise at number 1. We got Todd Gurley. Adrian Peterson is going to be up there as well, but Christian McCaffrey's number 2 in tags. Alvin Kamara is 3 in tags. Now, with the news that Chris Thompson is out, I would expect Adrian Peterson to be in the mix. Nick Chubb will be into the mix because of the news that Dalvin Cook is coming back. That will hurt the ownership of Latavius Murray a little bit. Of those guys at the top, do you have a preference? Because Melvin Gordon practiced in full on Friday, and I don't want to say I'm going to fade Gurley. I'm not Cardi over here with hot takes, but I can see myself diversifying a little bit because I know that people aren't really going to Melvin Gordon, and the guy is awesome, and he's cheaper.
That game is interesting to me too. It's a really close point spread. Like it's like a 2-point spread. It's kind of gone back and forth, and the game total is just under 50. So if you're going to stack it, I mean, if you're going to take like cheap Russell Wilson with one of his cheap receivers, you might as well go on the other side with Melvin Gordon. I think that's the play. If you're going to take Melvin Gordon, you might as well go for with the Russell Wilson on the other side, who's playing really well. I know he's a low volume passer, but he's still putting up 3 touchdowns a game, throwing like 24 times. What if he throws 40 times finally in a game? Anyways, I'm on board with Melvin Gordon as the contrarian pick. And then, you can still pick and choose other parts from that Saints-Rams game too.
Yeah, that's the case. Like, are you surprised Alvin Kamara is so highly owned and no one is wanting to own that awful Mark Ingram? Because I get it. I'm on board with that, but I'm sure you love Mark Ingram.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you saw my tweet earlier in the week. I mean, Mark Ingram, 10 touchdowns in his last 9 home games. Like, the guy does produce. I mean, and really, if you look at his 3 games this year, he played 55% of the snaps at home and then under 55% on the 2 road games. So I don't know if there's something to that. Maybe just the Saints are getting up more when they're at home. I do kind of like the Saints in this game too, so it might lend itself to more Mark Ingram. For 5K, and again, maybe you game stack and maybe you play both Saints running backs because Kamara is basically a receiver anyways, right? So, but no, I'm on board with Mark Ingram this week. I really am. I think it's the right game conditions, and it's at home, like I said.
So the two guys that are going to fly under the radar, sub 10% in terms of overall ownership in GPPs for the running back position, Melvin Gordon is one of them, and maybe he gets a slight bump because he practiced in full, and now it looks like he's going to play. A lot of people were avoiding him because he plays in that late set of games that you would have to late swap, and then you would just have to keep money on the table and go to Gurley because there was no one else really to go to in the late set of games. The other one is James Conner. James Conner's not getting a ton of ownership. Tariq Cohen's not getting a ton of ownership. And with Theo Riddick coming back, Kerryon Johnson is not getting a ton of ownership either. Would you play any one of those three guys, or are they being low owned for a reason?
Who was the second guy you mentioned? Sorry, I spaced out for like a millisecond.
Tariq Cohen.
Tariq Cohen, right? Yeah. I like Kerryon Johnson, and I know Theo Riddick is back, but I just can't see Detroit giving too many snaps to Theo Riddick. And I mean, yeah, the matchup against Minnesota, it's not as bad as it probably appeared like last year. I mean, Minnesota's still been giving up some decent points to like opposing running backs and stuff like that, and they've been getting in a few shootouts. I mean, they're playing at a faster pace, more of a passing-based offense. So if you saw Kerryon Johnson, he worked really, really well in the pass game last week. I mean, better than Theo Riddick ever has in his time as a Lion. So I think
come on now. Theo Riddick has been an excellent pass catcher.
He's an excellent pass catcher. He's excellent at getting like 8 catches for 30 yards. I mean, I guess my point is Kerryon Johnson's just such a better open field runner. So for me, I don't mind going there. Tariq Cohen is a guy I love, but God, that game, it just screams ugly. The game total is under 40, and I know the Bears are like 9-point favorites, but oh boy, it just seems too ugly for me to want to target Cohen in that matchup. So I think of those guys you mentioned, Kerryon Johnson probably the most attractive to me.
Like Connor's really interesting because people will go to Kamara like we talked about. People are going to McCaffrey. People are going to Hunt. People are paying up for Gurley, and he's just there. And I don't really know what to do with him. I hate the matchup, but I mean, Christian McCaffrey just scored 2 touchdowns against the Ravens last week. You know that Connor's going to get the usage. We always talk about like pivot plays and contrarian plays. You're always better off making a contrarian play or pivoting off of someone who's good to someone else who is good just in a bad matchup. It seems like James Conner is like the prototypical guy this week, especially coming off of the spot where he just smashed last week and people had him. And now they're like, no, I can't have James Conner.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to see everyone get off him because I agree. I mean, we just saw Christian McCaffrey have one of his best games of the year against the Ravens defense, right? So he's got to at least have some consideration when you're doing tournament lineups and you're trying to get away from a little bit of the chalk at running back. I don't know. I feel like Kareem Hunt might be the guy there that really has the best upside at 7,700. He's not quite as high in tags as some of like Gurley and Kamara, and you get a little bit lower ownership, maybe not super low, but lower than the top 2 or 3 guys. And go against the Cleveland defense, who's really struggled against the run at times. I think Hunt is probably the better upside play for me, but I see the value in going to like a 3% James Conner. I think all the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be like 3% this week, by the way, if you want to go with a Pittsburgh stack.
Yeah, it's tough to do if you're playing like 2 or 3 lineups to insert James Conner. But once you start verging into like 10, 20, or way more than that, I think that you need to have some expectation for the volume that goes along with him, that you need to have him in a few lineups. Like Adrian Peterson's right below, and his ownership is going to spike because of the price discount. No Chris Thompson. Capri Bibbs has been playing around like 25% of the snaps when Chris Thompson's been out. He just hasn't been doing anything. But this is against Atlanta. We know Atlanta very terrible against pass-catching running backs. That's what Bibbs is going to be used for. Would you consider Bibbs? Do you think it hurts Peterson, or do you think Peterson just gets involved in the passing game now?
I don't think Peterson will get involved in the passing game. I mean, we saw him in other games. Thompson was out. They don't really deploy him as like a traditional pass catching back. They just don't do that. They don't insert him into the Chris Thompson role. They'd rather take some scrub like Capri Bibbs, right? So and put him in that role, which is fine. I mean, that's what they do. I think if I'm targeting Washington, I think I'd rather go to Reed than Peterson. Don't really love the price jump and the fact people are going to be on him. I mean, last week was really the week to use Adrian Peterson against a terrible run defense, and no one was on him, right? So now more people are going to be on him, and the Falcons are bad against covering the pass catching running backs. Not that they do have one of their run stoppers back, so I mean it's not really that good a spot for Peterson, I guess what I'm trying to say, because he's not going to get that pass catching role. Bibbs is interesting, though. I do agree. I think he's in play this week for sure.
Well, most of the ownership in this $5,000 range is going to your best friend, your bum buddy, Mark Ingram. He's going to be like 13, 14% owned. But all the other guys around him, everyone's going to completely avoid him. So that's a great pivot spot. I mean, anytime you can not play a chalky Mark Ingram who's on the back end of a bad split, come on now. But Latavius Murray with Dalvin Cook going to play 8 to 12 snaps. So they say people are going to just exit Latavius Murray in this situation. But if Cook's not going to be 100%, this is a game the Vikings need. Murray has been awesome. He's cheap. And I originally had him projected at like 10, 11%. This Cook news is going to drop him to like 5, 4%. Like, I wouldn't play Latavius Murray in cash games. However, I still think he's an excellent tournament play.
I might even still consider him for cash games. I just don't see if Latavius Murray gets off to a good start, and Detroit Lions have like the bottom 3 run defense right now. I think they're second in yards per game allowed as a defense. He's going to have a monster game. They might throw Dalvin Cook out for a few snaps. Who cares? Latavius Murray will be on for all the big plays. I mean, this is really just a get Dalvin Cook up to speed game. They're not going to throw him out there for like 20 snaps or 20 touches or anything like that. So I'm not that worried about it. And I agree. I mean, I think it's a good spot. I had actually thought Murray would be too chalky to play. Now he looks like he's going to be at a great ownership. So he's very attractive to me. Only other name I'd throw out there is, I know you liked him last week, but Isaiah Crowell is a really good matchup too. Same kind of thing. It's a bottom 5 run defense he's going up against. He gets all the early down carries. We don't really care about the PPR because if he gets off to a good start in this game, he's going to go nuts. So I like Crowell at 42 too.
Yeah, I like Crowell too. However, Elijah McGuire has been activated from IR. You can see a bit of a split.
Yeah.
If they do fall behind, I would anticipate seeing McGuire play more. He'll get more usage on the ground than Cannon's was, Trenton Cannon, but he'll still be used as the sort of the Bilal Powell back. So you're going to look at like almost a dicier 50-50 situation, but the price is still fine on Isaiah Crowell that I can go to it. The really one that's going just completely under the radar, I haven't projected at 3% going up. You mentioned the Lions are a really crappy run defense. So are the Broncos. And Lamar Miller's been good 2 weeks in a row. I get it. Lamar Miller's the worst guy in the world to ever play. But I think this game shoots out. This is a game where you can run on Denver, and I think that they don't want to get Deshaun Watson killed. So if they can be successful in doing that, you're looking at a, $5,200, 20-plus touch guy that is going up in a terrific matchup coming off of 2 good weeks. They're having trust in him, and against a team that has an awesome pass rush where you don't want to get your star quarterback killed. Like, I wouldn't play him with any of the other Texans. He might just be sort of on an island, or you pair him up with the Texans defense. But I think it's kind of weird that he's being overlooked. And maybe that's where some of the Murray stuff goes, right on to Miller.
Yeah, I'll say this. The Denver defense has shored up their run defense last couple of games. I think they've only allowed like 60 yards rushing or even less than that their last game. So I still respect the Broncos defense enough, I guess. I think I'd rather go to Murray or Ingram in that spot. But I mean, it's true. I mean, if you like the Texans or you think this game shoots out, I definitely don't have a problem using Miller, and especially, correlated with the Texans defense, because you're right. It's not that bad a spot for the Texans defense against Case Keenum. So
I like Nick Chubb just because of the volume and the matchup up against Kansas City. It's not the safest play in the world, but he's safer than someone like Isaiah Crowell for a floor at least. Like if it was cash games, I would play Chubb. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't play Crowell because you can probably mine 16 to 22 touches total, most of those coming on the ground, and all the goal line work if the Browns do get down there. So, and the Browns are pretty banged up in the receiving game, so you might see situations where Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson are on the field at the same time, with Duke Johnson split out wide. So I don't mind that so much. 4,500, you don't need him to do all that much. And he does have multiple touchdown upside, which is huge for this price point. The one I will look at, though, is Chris Carson. He popped up on Thursday with a hip injury. The last time this happened was week 4. He did not play that week. We're probably not going to know about Chris Carson until, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. So it's not going to be a part of the inactives. You would have to late swap, if anything. But I don't like Carson sort of on an island, especially dealing with a hip injury. But if he doesn't go, Mike Davis is $3,400 against the Chargers. Good matchup. You know they want to run. He would handle all the ball, all the goal line work. That I will hold out for that and utilize my late swap, utilize him in my flex, just have someone down there that I can go down to get Mike Davis.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're Definitely. I mean, the one thing is you could build lineups around it, having a guy in the flex in a late game that you could flex to Mike Davis. Or you could just say, if your lineup builds out that way, just make sure you get the guy in the flex. But either way, it's a good tactic because you're going to get, and these are good spots because you get a guy like Mike Davis, like 1% owned, who's legitimately got like 25-point upside in that spot. So without Carson, obviously. So yeah, definitely a situation to watch.
Wide receivers by fansharesports.com tagging, which takes an aggregation of every podcast, every Twitter mention from the people who tout this stuff up, the people that the other people listen to. That's how we determine this stuff. Cortland Sutton obviously comes in at number 1. DJ Moore is number 2. Michael Thomas is number 3. The other guys getting a lot of love this week: Marvin Jones, Adam Thielen, Kenny Galladay, Robert Woods. This is how you get in the draw for 20 DK bucks, and it's going to be really tough to figure out. What do you think the ownership on Cortland Sutton is in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker? I'm going to say 31%.
Yeah, I'll go 35%.
35. All right, so people out there, you're watching this show, give the episode a like. Leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section and let me know what you think the ownership in the Millionaire Maker on DraftKings Week 9 will be for Cortland Sutton. That way you can get into a draw for 20 DK dollars. Winners given out on Monday's show, live 10 a.m. Eastern Time, DraftKings YouTube channel. Plus, you can just listen to it on the podcast after the fact. It comes out at like 11:15 a.m. So if you just want to wait the hour, you don't need to tune in live. You can just listen to it on your phone. But what's the number that you start fading him at? Because I don't want to play him. Not at this price. I play him in cash. Yeah. That's fine.
And I mentioned this like earlier in the week. I mean, Denver wants to run the ball, right? And look at Demaryius Thomas's game logs. It's been boom or bust for him. And I think Cortland Sutton's probably a better player than Demaryius Thomas right now. So the upside is definitely there. But just realize that his floor probably hasn't moved up that much. There's still very good chance for like a 3-target game here. Just because Demaryius Thomas left, I mean, this guy's slotting into like a 10-target game right off the bat. He could see 7 or 8 targets, and he could definitely like go for 6 and 80 and a touchdown or something. Well within the range of possibility, but the bust line of like 3 catches for 18 yards is in his range too. I mean, you still got Case Keenum. You still have a Broncos team that wants to run the ball, and I kind of like the Broncos in the spot, quite frankly. So I think they will be running the ball a lot. I think for tournaments, he's a fade for me. But cash game, throw him in for sure. It's just too cheap, I think, to ignore for that format.
How about this? 4 GPPs, don't play Cortland Sutton, play Traquan Smith, who's chalky, but not like 30%. He's like 10%. Drew Dinkmeyer was big on Jakeem Grant for the Dolphins if Kenny Stills ends up sitting. Devontae Parker's down there, who I like a little bit more. DJ Moore's down there. He's going to be chalky, but not to the same extent. And then just play Emmanuel Sanders instead of Cortland Sutton, and boom, you get the better guy. Yeah, he's more expensive, but I have him projected for like 3% ownership.
Yeah. No, Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, I think the other thing I was thinking, I just play Phillip Lindsay with the Broncos defense, right? So there's different ways to attack this sort of chalky Cortland Sutton week. You can either just play him and be like, I love Cortland Sutton. I'm going to go 100%, put him in every lineup. That's fine too. But the way I'll probably do it is use the either the running game or, like you said, maybe throw Sanders in and go another route. The other name I'll throw out at that price, because you mentioned a few, is David Moore of the Seahawks. He's got a red hot fire Russell Wilson as quarterback right now in a game that could potentially shoot out. So I don't mind David Moore either.
Well, I don't mind David Moore. I just worry that if this game goes to script for the Seahawks, that are we really banking on him like catching 1 of every 3 targets for a touchdown? Poor Sealy and Garion got into it big time about the Seahawks offense. That Can this sort of efficiency continue week after week after week? Like, history would dictate no, but it keeps happening. So what do you do?
Here's the counter argument to that, though. What if they pass more and they keep the same efficiency? Because the efficiency is coming from Russell Wilson just playing awesome. So what if you just get more awesome Russell Wilson? Like, what if the game shoots out and he finally throws 40 times and runs like 10 times? I mean, you're going to get a massive game from him and one of his receivers. So I understand the argument. I mean, he's not going to throw 3 touchdowns on 20 pass attempts every week, but is he always going to throw 20 times? I mean, it works both ways, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can say it. I don't hate David Moore here. Now that Theo Riddick's back, TJ Jones is still somewhat banged up, but Brandon Powell is getting a lot of like
Right.
internet buzz. I doubt he's more than 1% owned, but he's only 3K. And if you think that Lions game with the Vikings is going to be a really high scoring affair, I mean, I don't mind Michael Roberts at tight end for the absolute bare min for Detroit. But if you're going to talk about like a bare min receiver, Brandon Powell could eat up the Vikings in the slot where they've just been trounced all year.
Yeah, Powell is interesting. I'm glad you brought him up because I completely forgot to write down notes today. But yeah, I think he's legitimately in play. I do think Kenny Golladay is more interesting. Obviously, is the real upside play there, but you don't need much from Powell to pay off from you in a big way. And if he does somehow bust a big play or pull like a Golden Tate and take a 2-yard pass like 50 yards, I mean you're more than ahead of the field. So. Yeah, I think you have to look objectively at the Detroit wide receivers. I think Marvin Jones is going to be a fade for me. Xavier Rhodes is still questionable, but even if Xavier Rhodes doesn't play, I feel like Minnesota's probably going to shift coverage over to Jones. I think Golladay is the play here for me, with Powell being obviously a really cheap option that you can still consider in GPPs.
I like both the Lions guys. I think they're both objectively fine plays. They're both going to be relatively chalky. I like Deshaun Jackson in that range at $5,000 with the Fitzmagic. That game is the second highest projected point total of the week. People are trying to get access to it, and Deshaun Jackson's just not a guy that is getting any buzz whatsoever. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, it's kind of strange for Jackson and even Mike Evans. I mean, you look at paying up for wide receiver this week, and DeAndre Hopkins has some buzz. And Michael Thomas, but Mike Evans has been, dealing at times this year. He averaged like 27 DK points with Fitzpatrick starting in the first 3 weeks. So this is a really good matchup. I mean, Carolina's secondary isn't elite by any means. They've allowed some monster games. So I think targeting Fitzmagic here with either or maybe both Deshaun and Evans makes sense. It's definitely going to be contrarian because, like you said, the Tampa Bay wide receivers are getting overlooked.
And you could even drop down. I mean, OJ Howard's not being overlooked, but he's the cheap way. Yeah. If you want to use Fitzpatrick, you want to use Howard, that opens up a lot of salary. Then you can use Evans along with him or use Deshaun Jackson. I like Deshaun Jackson for the price point just because it saves you a ton and he doesn't need to do much because what Deshaun Jackson does is catch long touchdowns. He catches one of those, boom, price paid on one play. If Diggs doesn't go, first of all, I had Thielen projected around like 14, 15%. He's the highest priced wide receiver. If Diggs sits, how much do you think people will gravitate towards him that were looking for ways not to spend up? They're like, screw it, I'm just going to spend up for Thielen. How many people do you think do that?
I think enough people that it'll make him, it'll bump him up into the top three, maybe even second behind Courtland Sutton. I could see that. I think people just say, well, I have to play Thielen now. Like it's, he's going to get all the targets. There's no Steph Diggs, stealing a touchdown. It's going to all go to Thielen. That could very well happen. I'm not suggesting that that's not going to happen. I mean, he's been getting like 15 targets with Diggs in the lineup, so who knows how many he's going to get this week. But it is Detroit who really suffers against the run. So if it's a low volume passing day and Thielen only gets 10 targets or Aldrick Robertson catches a touchdown, there's still bust potential. It's just, yeah, I think he's almost going to become more of a fade candidate without Diggs because his ownership is going to rocket him into the top two, top three.
So Diggs was being talked up a lot anyway, and at his price point, it was creating some nice value right around him for really good players that no one was going to pay for. Like no one's going to pay for Jarvis Landry, although I think they should. I think this is a great week to go get Jarvis Landry with everyone else on Cleveland dead. That, hey, maybe Jarvis can bring some in this week against that Chiefs defense. But I had him projected at like 3% owned, and I had Diggs projected at like 14% owned, and they're only a difference of $300 in salary. So you could drop salary down that way. Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods are probably the biggest benefactors. They were going to be somewhat highly owned anyway. They're going to be way more highly owned if Diggs ends up sitting. Like Woods will go from like 12 to 17%, and Cooks will probably go from like 10 to 13%. So Landry and Sanders are probably the better pivots unless you can find your way up to Juju, who I don't really love all that much in that area.
I don't really love Juju either, although this kind of feels like a Juju week just because no one's going to use Pittsburgh, and it just seems like someone from Pittsburgh goes off when they're not chalk. But yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the price point you want to get Jarvis Landry at. He was getting over 7K, and I didn't really understand it. Like the targets were there, but he's been so inefficient with Baker Mayfield that it just didn't make sense to pay up for him. Now he's at a completely rosterable price point, 6,500, and in a really good matchup. I mean, Kansas City hasn't been terrible against receivers, but they just play so fast and they score so often that, I mean, the opposing wide receivers almost always rack up some yards. So 6,500, I completely agree. If he's going to be the lowest in that category, I think I'd get on him. I do agree. I think Robert Woods will see a bump with no Diggs as well. I don't think Brandon Cooks will see the same amount of bump, but he did have some better games with Cooper Kupp in the lineup. So Kupp being back could actually help Cooks. I just like him in the matchup because I just feel like the Rams are going to have to score. I feel like the Rams might even be behind in that game. And again, I think another big game from Jared Goff is on tap too. So
I would go to Kupp before I went to the other two. I always just like playing Kupp every week that he's healthy.
It's probably the smart play, to be honest.
And he comes with that questionable tag, and it's in a later sort of game. So if we don't know definitively if he's probably going to play. They've been saying all week he's going to play. But there's a chance that he doesn't. That's not off the table. He's still questionable, even if he's 95% likely to play kind of thing. But he's going to be the lowest owned of the three Rams receivers. That's just the way to go. And he's the cheapest. So that makes the most sense to me. For Minnesota, if Diggs sits, Laquan Treadwell is $3,300. Aldrick Robinson is $3,200. In the two previous weeks with Diggs on the field, Treadwell played 63 and 74% of snaps. Aldrick Robinson played 23 and 12. It seems like they like to take deeper shots with Aldrick and potentially use him in the red zone more. Do you have a preference between those two guys? And is there either one that you would actually play? Because I'm considering playing a mix of both of them.
I think I'd actually play Aldrick Robinson. I mean, what has Laquan Treadwell done to really earn our respect? I mean, I don't know if he's just going to walk into 10 targets either. That's the other thing. Maybe we see more Kyle Rudolph or something like that. So Aldrick Robinson is a legit talent, and he's a good, downfield stretcher. We've seen him catch touchdowns with Diggs and Thielen in the lineup already. So that's where I would go, because really, I don't see this as a guarantee with Treadwell if Diggs sits and he gets to start. I don't see it as a slam dunk for even 12 points. I think I'd rather just go with the guy who's got the real upside for the one play, and that's Aldrick Robinson, and is going to see a boost in snaps too. So,
I think you hit on it there. I agree. I think Aldrick Robinson is the better play, and he's $100 cheaper, so that's always fun. But Treadwell has been on the field anyway, and he's doing nothing. He might galvanize more of a target share, but Aldrich's going to see a bump from 25% to 65, 70% in this range in terms of snap share. So if he can increase his production at all and he becomes that guy that can help stretch the field, then boom, you're looking at a potential bonanza down there. That's a really good pivot off of Courtland Sutton, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one way you can go. Obviously, it's a bit boom or bust because, like I said, Minnesota could run the ball a ton, but with no Diggs, I mean, there's got to be a secondary option that pops up at some point for Kirk Cousins in that game. So, yeah.
I guess the last one would be if Allen Robinson sits again with this groin injury. Do you have interest in Gabriel or Miller against the Bills? Because I don't know if I do.
I don't. Again, that game is just so ugly. I mean, Peterman's going to start, or it looks like he's going to start anyways, and the point total is so low. I mean, Gabriel is a good enough player and fast enough that he can bust a 60-yard touchdown and pay off for you. But I think you're really going to need that play, because I don't think he's going to get there on volume this week in this game. I think the Bears defense will probably shut down the Bills, and then they'll run the ball, do some short passes with Tariq Cohen, and they'll just sit on them like most teams have done and when they beat the Bills. So I guess that's my way of saying I'm not that interested, really.
Are you surprised all three of the Falcons receivers are projected below 6%?
I'm not surprised, because I think people just look at Washington and they're like, oh, Washington likes to run the ball. They're so slow. It's not a good matchup. But I wrote up Julio Jones this week. I mean, Washington's secondary is a little bit banged up. Quentin Dunbar's been their best cornerback. He's highly questionable to start this week. And it's not a bad matchup for Julio Jones if Dunbar doesn't play. So, again, another game, it's kind of like the Seattle Chargers game. It's a close point spread between two solid teams. And if it starts going back and forth, you could easily see a shootout develop here. So two competent quarterbacks as well. I think Julio's actually a really good play this week. I wouldn't be shocked to see him finally bust into the end zone.
I will say, of my favorite like high-end receivers to go to, I won't be using any Thielen. I just think that's going to be too out of control, and it sucks not using him. But I'm not playing enough. I think I'm only going to play. I've been divvying up how I've been playing to try to find some consistency, and maybe I do need to stick with something. I'm just going to play 5 lineups this week and really try to figure that out. So you have to be super. You can't just go in. Well, I'm going to play Thielen in this one, and I'm going to play Julio in this one. You need to be very decisive with who you're going to play a lot of. And I really want access. I want some Tyreek Hill lineups because he was taken off the injury report, and I think that people are a bit iffy on him, and he's expensive, and he's just a slate breaker as it is. But DeAndre Hopkins is the one I want to pay up for. He's the guy.
Hopkins, I'm scared for Hopkins this week because
Why?
Because Will Fuller
is shutting him down. No one.
Well,
He's going to turn into old DeAndre Hopkins where he gets 21 targets a game.
But the thing is, he was actually better with Fuller when he was getting less targets. So I don't know. Maybe I'm blowing that out.
But we saw a lot of, like, when we think about like Watson and Hopkins, that we saw a lot of Watson under center with Hopkins and Will Fuller healthy. When Fuller was hurt the majority of the time, it's when like Tom Savage was playing quarterback.
That's true. He did have some Tom Savage thrown in there. So I guess maybe I shouldn't hold that against him. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the spot, I guess. I do think it's a good spot for the Denver defense because they have played better last couple weeks. Even against KC, they looked okay sometimes. But you're right. I mean, look, it's still, I'm not saying Deshaun Watson or just DeAndre Hopkins can't go nuts in this spot because we've seen him, bust out against better pass defenses than Denver even. So I get it. It's not for me. I'm going to avoid the Houston offense for the most part this week, I think, and just hope that Deshaun Watson cools off a little bit.
I can tell you the 4 quarterbacks that everyone's going to play this week. So by the Fanshare Sports tagging, the 3 guys that have the most tags this week are Cam Newton, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Jared Goff. I'm going to throw Patrick Mahomes into that mix too because people are going to play him. I don't know if any other quarterback gets above 6% in the Millionaire Maker. To be
I agree.
Honest to God, you can take whoever else you want and they will not be chalk.
Yep, I completely agree. It's a very condensed week for quarterbacks. I mean, looking at the slate, that was like the first thing that popped out to me. I mean, you have you have Fitzpatrick at a nice price. People want to go back to that, see if they can get the upside. Cam obviously playing Tampa makes a ton of sense. Don't need much analysis there. And then you have the Goff Breeze game, and Breeze has obviously seen his production go down with Mark Ingram back, and that goes back to last year. So I understand why he's not super chalky. But Goff is in a great spot. He'd be my number 1 choice for this slate without a doubt. I didn't even see a price increase. And then obviously, Mahomes. I mean, so yeah, I agree. It's a very condensed week at quarterback.
So where do we go for pivots if we want to do it? Like, do you have any interest in Baker? Could you play like a Baker, Landry, Njoku stack?
I think if you're going to target that game going with Baker, I mean, he's so much cheaper than Mahomes, right? He's $1,500. What if, just playing with Kareem Hunt on the other side and assume Kareem Hunt goes absolutely nuts and then Baker throws 50 times and connects with Landry or Njoku or both, right? So, yeah, I think Baker's in play. I think the other guy I really like is Russell Wilson. Like I said, I've already talked about the Seahawks. He's just playing so efficiently. What if he finally gets that big volume game? I mean, he's going to go nuts. So I like Wilson. I like Baker Mayfield as pivots.
I'm going to say the game that I really like, and you're probably going to get him at 1%, and I think that anytime that you can get him at 1%, he's going to be under duress. It's not the greatest spot, but 2 teams who play top 10 pace, Denver versus Houston, you can get Deshaun Watson at 1% this week.
Yeah, and I already made my case against it, but I do agree. I mean, the guy's a walking fantasy point taking machine.
I mean, there's not a huge disparity between Cam rushes more when he gets near the goal line. I mean, he actually gets into the end zone a lot more than Deshaun Watson does when they get near the goal line on the ground. So Cam is better, but Cam is legitimately going to be potentially 17 times more owned than Deshaun Watson. So the way you need to think about this is, does Cam, who's more expensive, mind you, outscore Deshaun Watson 17 times out of 7 or 17 times out of 18? The answer is no to that question.
Yeah, it's a hard no, obviously. And I agree. I'm not going to use chalky Cam Newton either this week. Like I said, I think I will have some Jared Goff just because I think the potential for that game at a game total of almost 60 points is just insane for some crazy things to happen, like a 40-point game from Goff or something like that. So I'll be going with Goff. Like I said, if I'm targeting KC, I think Baker Mayfield is an interesting pivot. But I do have to agree. I mean, look, if you are going to get Deshaun Watson at like ridiculously low ownerships, you always have to consider him. And I do feel the same way about Russell Wilson, though. Even though this season we haven't seen the same Russell Wilson, I do feel like his play right now is going a little bit overlooked.
Cooper Kupp has been removed from the injury report, so he's going to be no more 95% going to play. He's going to play against the Saints in New Orleans, so that's a really nice spot for him. I guess the only other guy is Rivers because he's so cheap.
Yeah,
I don't love it.
Yeah, I'd probably just play like we said. I think if you're going to play that side, just play Melvin Gordon because you're going to get him so low owned anyways, right?
Yeah, and in that range, you could just play Baker, who's almost like locked in to throw it 50 times.
Yeah, I agree.
Much like quarterback, tight end is shaping up to be very condensed in terms of overall ownership. Like it's pretty clear who people are playing. OJ Howard is someone that everyone wants exposure to. I get it. I like OJ Howard. I like OJ Howard every single week. Then it's going to be Greg Olsen. Then it's going to be Travis Kelce. David Njoku probably ends up, even after putting up the 0 last week, he probably still ends up near the very top because there are so few tight ends on this slate that are any good whatsoever that it's somewhat problematic. So I'm good with Njoku if he's the fourth highest owned. I'll use him. I like OJ Howard. He's cheap. I get the Olsen. I get the Kelce. They're just too expensive for me. The two I was looking at, Chris Herndon the fourth, who I keep using every week. He keeps scoring touchdowns, so that's nice. But I want to see what happens with Robbie Anderson and Quincy Enunwa, both of whom missed Wednesday, missed Thursday, returned to practice on Friday. They have a shot at playing on the weekend. If both those guys sit, I like Herndon at 3,000. Yeah,
I mean, I agree. Herndon's definitely in play this week. And you're right. I mean, the tight ends this week are just terrible. The name I'll throw out there, and I think the guy I really like, partly because we're just doing a war of attrition, though, is Jordan Reed coming off like a 12-target game in a prime matchup. I mean, people are overlooking that it's Atlanta, right? And just assuming we got to go to the running back. There's no reason why Jordan Reed can't hover around the line of scrimmage and catch like another 10 passes. So they basically used him like that last week. If he finds the end zone, this game, gets a little bit shootouty. I think Jordan Reed could definitely have a big week. And the Redskins receivers are always banged up. So I think another 10 targets for Reed, I wouldn't shock me at all.
It wouldn't. It just, what does he do with those 10 targets, I guess, is the problem.
Yeah.
Realistically, if we're talking about like injuries and like what's going on and guys that are beat up, I had Rudolph projected around like 8%. Where do you think he gets up to if Diggs sits?
Yeah, he could definitely double. Like he could get into like the 15% range. I think. I guess it makes sense
because he's cheap, right? He's $3,600.
His price has finally come down. He's been way overpriced all year for his usage, right? So he's been like not even in the conversation. I mean, I think this is the first time I've talked about Kyle Rudolph since week 1. So, but again, the tight end position is so thin this week that he's definitely in play. I mean, he's getting close to that 3,000 minimum price. This is the guy who's still getting like averaging like 6 targets a game with Diggs in the lineup. So they use him just a little bit more and he gets in the end zone. He's still a bit touchdown dependent, but his red zone usage could easily go up without Diggs too. So
Michael Roberts at the min, $2,500 for Detroit. I don't hate. Obviously, it's not a safe play, but you hope you can find the end zone again. That's all you can ask for from $2,500. Herndon, though, if those Jets guys sit, I do like a lot. So that's tight end. Defenses, do you Bears or do you not Bears?
I'm on the not Bears just because it doesn't look like I don't think Khalil Mack's going to play. I think it downgrades him a little bit. And I generally don't pay up for defenses. I know it's the Bills. I know it's Peterman and probably going to throw a pick 6, but I just rather take the savings.
Yeah, in a week where like almost everyone is paying up at running back and really trying to squeeze one of those top end wide receivers in as well, whether it be Thielen now especially, or whether it is a DeAndre Hopkins or a Mike Evans or an Antonio Brown, who not a lot of people are playing Antonio Brown or Steelers in general, like you mentioned. But if you pay up for Travis Kelce, who's going to be super popular, you can't just pay up for a defense. It can't work like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because you really want to play the Bears doesn't mean you get an extra $2,000 in salary cap. So they're going to be popular, but I think I'm full fade with you on them. They're just too expensive. And that game could be such a slog. I know Peterman's playing, but the Bills might try to run the ball 55 times, and the Bears might just say, you know what, we'll do the same.
Yeah, I mean, you might see Chris Ivory take more snaps at quarterback than Nathan Peterman this week, right? So
I like
based
that.
on what they're doing last week.
I would enjoy that a lot. So the ones that I like the Broncos and Texans, even if that game is a bit more of a shootout. I just think there's sacks galore, pressure galore. I don't know if I would play Broncos D against Deshaun Watson, but here's the thing you need to remember. Deshaun Watson throws a pick six. It's -1 for him. It's plus for your defense, and Deshaun Watson gets the ball back. Perfect. I think as a floor defense, both those are very good. The Broncos are going to be pretty popular. If we go to FanShare and look at who the popular ones this week are going to be, the Bears coming at number 1, obviously. The Chiefs and the Broncos, 1, 2, 3. The Dolphins are right after that, which I don't super understand. So I like the Texans as a contrarian defense. I really like the Lions from the very, very bottom, especially without Diggs and potentially a banged up Delvin Cook getting snaps in the backfield. Boom, sign me up. And I don't hate the Bills. God save me.
Bills, yeah. I mean, Bills at home. The Bills have had a few big games, so I mean, I can't really. I laugh, but they have they have like 3 games of over 10 DK points or something on the year. So I'll throw out the Jets there. I don't understand it. Like the Miami's best cornerback is banged up too. He might not even play. So I think the Jets are actually probably the better team. Miami's got lucky in a couple spots, had some weaker matchups, but I think the Jets coming in, it's against Brock Osweiler, right? Like, how bad a matchup can it be? I mean, so I think I'd rather take the Jets in that spot. Maybe pair them with Crowell.
You could do that. The one thing I will say, there are very few things you want to stack. Like, if you play Kansas City's defense, you have to play Tyreek Hill in that lineup, I think. Yeah,
I would agree. I mean, I think it's a good correlation almost any week, right? But especially on a week where you're going to get both of like 2%. So
yeah, and if you're ever going to play the Chiefs defense, you might as well maximize the special teams part of it too. And I think the same goes that if you're going to use Miami, you should use Jakeem Grant. Especially if Stills sits, because Grant's going to see a whole bunch of targets in the receiving game, and he'll return all the kicks.
Yeah, and it's rare that there's only a few spots, right, in the league where you get a guy who's returning kicks and an integral part of the offense like Hill or Grant. So yeah, no, I mean, generally when you're trying to use those defenses, you should think very hard about using the player correlated with them. So 100% I agree on Tyreek this week for sure if you're going to do that.
So let's talk some spreads here. I want to let everyone know the odds and lines are subject to change. See the website for the actual odds. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. I locked in Detroit plus 4.5 as my super lock of the week. That was before the Diggs injury. And even now after the Diggs injury, Detroit's now plus 5. Still like Detroit.
Still, I haven't quite decided on that game. I think I might actually take the Minnesota side. I like the way they've been playing.
To me, this feels like a field goal game.
Yeah, it's not a game I'm like super excited about. Let's put it that way. I get the Detroit angle. Minnesota's a little bit banged up. Maybe not quite as good as last year. So Detroit was kind of coming on for me, but they really let me down like a couple weeks in a row. So again, I think that's a game I'm gonna either avoid or might take Minnesota. But I think right now it's just a game I'm not gonna bother with. Pick out here a couple of back to the top.
My favorite bet on the board this week is over Denver Houston. That's over 46. I think that game gets into the 50s.
Yeah, I could see that. Either way, right? Like you said, if Denver's defense comes through, I mean, maybe they score a defensive touchdown and then Deshaun Watson comes back. So I don't hate the over. I think my favorite spread bet of the week right now is Washington.
You like Washington? Everyone, and maybe that's a good thing because everyone I've talked to is on Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, it's Atlanta outdoors. Washington's been just solid team this year, and I mean, what's Atlanta? They barely beat Tampa. Like they've had a couple close games with like the Giants and stuff like that. So I'm not really big on Atlanta, especially not in the Mercedes Dome or whatever it is in Atlanta. So I think this game, Washington at home, I really like that. I think they're getting a little bit disrespected, not getting at least 3 points because they're only minus 1.5. Other spots.
You like the Saints plus 1.5 at home?
I do actually. Again, maybe not a game like I'd go super heavy on, but I think if I had to pick right now, like the Rams have just been getting by. Like I don't want to say they've been getting lucky because they play end game, the end of the game so smart compared to other teams, but it's been close. I mean, they probably should have been beat last week by Green Bay. It was close against Seattle. They had another kind of close game too a couple of weeks ago. So I think New Orleans is coming on. I think New Orleans is at full strength and they're at home. So yeah, I do kind of like New Orleans. So I'm taking that game. I think I look at Kansas City and Cleveland and it just looks like a trap. But at the same time, like what I'm seeing.
That line isn't moving. Everyone's
Yeah.
betting. Everyone is betting on the Chiefs, and it's stuck at 9 all week. I don't.
I think
that
there's actually
scares
some-
me.
Yeah, it does, and that's what I mean. Like, from what I'm seeing, it should be like almost the bet of the week, the Chiefs, but I might not touch it just because of that. So, just saying what I see is a Chiefs blowout, but it does scare me a little bit. I kind of like Baltimore, although I don't really want to touch that game. And then the other one that I like Denver. I do like Denver quite a bit. That would be like in my top 5, and I think Tampa Bay would be in my top 5 too if I was throwing out like a blazing 5 or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I like the points with Tampa. I'm still waiting for that to go to 7 because I think it gets there at 6.5 right now. Of the big like home dogs, you got Cleveland +9 at home against Kansas City. The Bills are +10. I like the Bills +10 more than I like Cleveland +9.
Yeah, Chicago's banged up. Their O-line's a bit banged up. They might not be without Mac. I completely agree. I think
You just have to pray Peterman doesn't throw 2 pick sixes.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Bills almost covered against the Patriots. I mean, it was that one touchdown that got called back, and the next one was like a pick 6, right? So it was that flipped the game, and we could come down to the same script. But in this spot against a more banged up Chicago team, who's good, but they're on the road, and I would take the points there too.
All right. Any final thoughts on Week 9, Jeffrey?
No, just play all the Rams and all the Saints, I guess. I don't know. Play Mark Ingram. And then tweet to Pat about how awesome Mark Ingram is.
Don't do that. That sounds horrible. I know letting your money on fire is illegal, but just to avoid a cop, go do that instead. Sounds more fun. Or you can be like us with our Canadian money that you can't light on fire.
Yeah, you can. It just takes a lot longer to melt metal. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Geoff, where can everyone check out your work and follow you on the Twitter machine?
Right, yeah. Article for the week for tournament plays is up on the DK Playbook, as always. Make sure you check out the DK Live app. We got updates going up there for football every week and live updates as the games are going on. Like we talked about last week, the app is just awesome for following whatever sport you're into anyway. So check out that DK Live app for me if you can.
Oh, remember I was telling you before we started about the golf bets that I have just for Friday only?
I do remember, Pat. How's Harris English?
He is he's 5 under through 8 holes.
Oh, he's hot fire, Harris English.
He is, and Lucas Glover's 1 under, and Harold Varner's 2 under. I need Harris English to keep it together here. And I got a lot of money coming my way. This is gonna be fantastic. Come on, Harris. Now everyone's gonna watch this like 2 hours from now, and he's gonna be like +3. I'm gonna feel like an idiot, but I got a 16-1 parlay and a 4-1 just bet on Harris English, hinging on him beating those other 2 losers. So let's go, Harris English. Golf bets. Best time of the year to bet on golf, by the way. I've been fire through the swing season.
I've taken a rest, but I admit, like this week perked my interest a little bit. So I'll probably be getting into it a little bit heavier the next 2 weeks.
Well, it's good. It's good to get into it like this week. I don't know about the OHL next week. I'm still doing the golf show if people care about golf, and I'm tweeting out golf bets. But like anytime that there is Shot Tracker, which there is this week, I don't know if there is for OHL, but there will be. I think
there is next week.
There will be for one of the courses at RSM in 2 weeks. I know that. I believe it's the South Course, one where they played the 3 rounds, but. The books are asleep. The books are asleep on golf because they know no one's betting it. That you can find some really good live options.
Oh yeah, okay. Like in play, yeah, no, that's a good point.
Like earlier today, Sam Burns was like 13 over par or something, and he was still 200-1. But Cam Davis, who made the second most birdies in round 1, was still 200-1. And you could still bet him on the top 5 as well at 50-1. Like that just seemed really strange. I would recommend everyone just sign up for fantasynational.com, track the live stats are there. You can see live strokes gained as it goes along, and just boom. You can the only reason I ended up on these 3-ball bets was I was just using Fantasy National. I was like, oh, these guys were the worst putters in the field yesterday. Let's bet them.
There you go.
So yeah, better at golf.
Let's just hope Harris English doesn't hit it into the woods because his driver is.
Pray for Harris. Pray for Harris. That's all I'm going to be doing. And pray for me if you're out there too. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at the PME. Give the episode a like. Leave your DraftKings handle in the comment section. And let me know what you think that Courtland Sutton's ownership projection will be in the Week 9 Millionaire Maker to get in a draw for 20 DK bucks. Winner announced on Monday's show live Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. On the DraftKings YouTube channel. We'll be taking your questions, updating all the injuries, and going game by game, and giving you our updated picks. Plus, we're going to tell you where all the monies is going on in terms of betting and that, whether it's going towards the over, the under, which side, and how the lines have moved from earlier in the week. You're going to want to watch it. I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. Good luck in week 9. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience! Experience!